But welcome everybody. So my role at the foundation is really, I handle a lot of our program around economic development, job creation, and workforce development. It really is an honor to be here today with our esteemed panelists. We're gonna have a very vibrant conversation. Let me introduce them very briefly. First, I'll start out of order. I'll start with Doug Wolf, who is and I need my glasses for this, the Associate Vice President for Research, Director of Strategic Initiatives at Penn State University, but he's also a professor of materials science and engineering, engineering sciences and mechanics, nuclear engineering, and additive manufacturing and design. So I think he's very well equipped to be on the panel today. Thank you, Doug. We also have Colby Hall, who is Executive Director of Shaping Our Appalachian Region. This is a nonprofit organization focused on increasing economic mobility opportunities in Central Appalachia. Thank you, Colby. And we have Rachel Hines, the Training Director for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union number 5, just right here on the Hot Metal Bridge, I found out today. And you remember Sola from the previous session. Thank you again, Sola, for coming to present here as well in our panel. Sola Talabi is from Pittsburgh Technical, which is a firm focused on supporting the nuclear energy through project development and technical assistance. So I'm going to start off our discussion with just going down the line, and we can start with you, Sola. If you can tell us just in 2-3 minutes a little bit more about yourself, although we had a wonderful introduction earlier. But just, if it would be great for you to talk a little bit more about Pittsburgh Technical's role and what you all do and how it relates to our conversation today. We're going to just go down the line, and then I do have a handful of questions, and we will have opportunity for Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Yes.
Gabriela. So when I decided as a high schooler to study engineering, it's because I wanted to learn everything I could about power, because I come from Nigeria, where till today only about 25% of the people have access to reliable, constant electricity. So as a youngster, I wanted to learn everything I could about energy, so I came to the US, studied engineering, and the only company that would hire me that was energy related was Westinghouse, and I knew absolutely nothing about the nuclear industry, and so I figured I would do this nuclear thing for a while until I found like a real energy company. But then I very quickly learned that there are obviously a lot of reasons why nuclear can uniquely address the challenges that are important to me, and I think some of the most important challenges facing humanity, which is global energy poverty and global warming. So sometimes folks ask me why I got into the nuclear industry, and I tell them that that's not as interesting, I think, as to why I decided to stay. And so why I decided to stay in the nuclear industry, other than the fact that I learned so much about what the technology can do, is also I realized how important the work was on September 11th, 2001, when I know there are probably some folks from Westinghouse who were at the Energy Center that day, and the building was evacuated, and I had only been at Westinghouse for about 8 months at the time. And I thought to myself, wow, you know, the building was evacuated because Westinghouse nuclear workers were considered a critical security asset. And I thought to myself, wow, this must really be important work. And so that's one of the reasons why I stayed. And sometimes I say that if for me, if there's one good thing that came out of September 11th, it's one of the reasons I decided to stay in the nuclear industry.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Rachel Hines, and I am a union electrician by trade. I also am the Assistant Training Director. Don't want to mess that one up.
It's okay.
I'm the Assistant Training Director in Pittsburgh for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union number 5. We cover 22 counties, and a lot of them were in the green. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about apprenticeship and about career readiness, about our training program.
Thank you, Colby.
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Colby Hall, and as Dr. Gonzalez said, I represent SOAR, which is an organization that does economic mobility work in Eastern Kentucky. So actually, my first trip to Pittsburgh, first trip to really, I guess, to Pennsylvania. I mean, if you don't count the airports and travel through and everything. So it's been great. But so I guess I would say I read an article a couple weeks ago, kind of how I wanted to start this conversation in the Wall Street Journal that was talking about kind of the sentiment of Americans, especially younger Americans around it was gauging their optimism for the future or their feeling about, could they be better than their parents? Could they do better than their parents economically? And I think the point of the article, if I'm remembering it, was that sentiment's at an all-time low in our country. And I personally believe that part of what has made America the global superpower has been relentless optimism about the future and about general agreement that if we work hard and study and do well and take care of each other, that you'll do well and you'll be able to have a family, have a house, whatever your version of the American dream is. And so we do work, and I'm sure it's not too dissimilar from parts of southwestern Pennsylvania that have been really hard hit by the decline of the coal industry, by shifts away from low-skilled labor. We've been one of the parts of the country where we've just been kind of economic casualties. And so when I think about what we do in terms of economic mobility, I tend to shy away now from workforce development because with no offense, because I think sometimes when people think workforce development, they think you set up a training program for 6 months and you fix someone. But what we see is our challenges for people that are outside of the workforce that aren't even looking for work is that the issues are much deeper. It's not that it's long-term unemployed, it's people that deal with substance use disorder, generational poverty, typically multiple of those factors. And so our work is about treating the whole person, right? Which has to include a good paying job, because we know that good paying employment provides purpose, provides dignity, but it alone is not enough to pull someone up. And so we're super excited about opportunities in nuclear, and I'm so grateful to be included on the panel today, and Christine King from GAIN and all the work that she's done and her team has done for us, and Austin Blanche is the reason we're here. But I think we're excited because we see this industry that is, again, knock on wood, is experiencing a renaissance that's rebuilding itself, that there's opportunities for us to connect our workforce into companies that need them in a way where they don't have to leave. And that is fueling this next era of competition with some geopolitical actors that could benefit the resurgence of advanced industries, which could mean more opportunities in a place like where we are, where there's not enough of them right now. So that's a little bit about us.
Thank you, Colby. Doug.
Great. Doug Wolf. I'm from Penn State University. And our interest here is really one of our largest or our primary strategic initiative at the university is our nuclear initiative. And within that nuclear initiative, our key focus is workforce development, research and development, as well as the Da Vinci reactor with the collaboration with Westinghouse. So being Penn State, one of our primary focus is really in our land grant mission is really to help educate the workforce for the next generation. And what's really exciting about this wonderful opportunity here is that working with our colleagues in the University of Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon, Penn State, and Westinghouse, we formed the Westinghouse University Alliance, where we're looking at how are we going to educate the next generation of workforce for the future. And what we're trying to do is position Penn State as the nuclear state for the next century. It's a really powerful statement. With all of the core opportunities and industry within Pennsylvania, we've got a wonderful opportunity here to set Pennsylvania to be that leader, not only in the Northeast, but also in the nation itself. We also want to make sure as we're developing the workforce for the next generation that we're actively involved in interacting with industry as well as our trade schools, our welders, our electricians as we move forward, because they're going to be a key for us to be successful as we develop not only the next generation workforce, but the right workforce for the next generation. So what Penn State's working with in collaboration with the state and a variety of different industry partners and universities is really to build out and develop the the workforce development roadmap for the state as well as for the nation. So we really appreciate today's discussion and the opportunity with the panel so that we can all work together to really make sure that we're all working together so we're not duplicating efforts as we make sure we've got the right workforce for the future. Thank you.
Great, thank you everybody. And Colby, thank you for queuing us up to talk about when we think about the workforce as the whole human being. And of course thinking, Doug, to your point about the collaboration that we all need. So when I want to take us, before we dive into the intricacies, let's say, of workforce development programs, I'd like to take a step back and talk about the general context and of employment and workforce in the nuclear energy sector. From each of your perspectives, what are the core challenges facing the region for the nuclear industry in order to find employees or for the talent pool to find employment? And how might we think of these as opportunity spaces? Because I do want us to be positive today about kind of what we can do. So for example, some of the contextual issues that come to my mind are, of course, the demographic shifts that this region is having, that we've got experiencing challenges in just simple population numbers. We've got technologies within a lot of industries, but particularly in nuclear that we talked about earlier today, that are constantly shifting and evolving, and the skills that have to adapt to that evolution. And then, of course, socioeconomic challenges in this region. So, Doug, why don't we start with you, and then we'll just go down the line.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's a major concern, with regards to, as we develop the next generation workforce, how can we entice individuals, to enter into the nuclear field for a variety of different applications. So I think what we need to do is reach back into the middle school and the high schools to get early engagement and really energize and excite individuals and students in order to say that there's a wonderful career path in the nuclear field. So I think that is one of the things we need to do a little better job of, because these students are being also courted by other industries like big tech. So it's going to be challenging, or it's always difficult to compete with big tech. But I think if we can engage students and individuals at an earlier age, I think we'll be a little more successful. I also think reskilling and upskilling the current workforce so we can identify in the regions that are economically disadvantaged or what have you, we could, develop programs where you get both online but also in-person learning. So as we develop those opportunities and make it easier, for those individuals, I think that will really help us to make a bigger impact, with regards to making sure we do have this the right workforce for the future.
So in our case, so just to paint a little context again of kind of where we work, one of our big issues, labor force participation is low in our region, specifically for prime age individuals, so people that are 25 to 54 years of age, super low. So nationally, that prime age employment rate is about 81%. Where we are, it's closer to 50%. So 1 out of every 2 people that are 25 to 54 in the prime working age years of their life, not just aren't working, but they're not trying. And there's lots of factors for that, but one of those is just pure supply and demand of good paying job opportunities, and that works against us in Eastern Kentucky. So we're also a CLEAP grantee, and we started this project looking at opportunities in the nuclear industry. I'm not a nuclear scientist, not at all. I just felt like there's something there, and we should apply and kind of figure out, could this be a pull strategy, so to speak. And so, working with the GAIN team and their series of consultants, we knew that our primary goal with the project was to look at family sustaining wage jobs as quickly as we can get them. And so in our case, we felt like we found a niche opportunity with some of the major players in the game. Framatome, we're coming up, I know there's been Westinghouse has been here. We're coming up in a few weeks to visit with some of their folks in their outage and maintenance work. And it's my understanding you've got a standard outage season in the fall, and in the spring, they break these things down, kind of inspect every component. And when we met with these companies, after being set up by the GAIN team, they pretty much said, like, we would take 300 people from you today. They'll get anywhere from $25 to $35 an hour, full benefits, and pretty much can work as much as they want to, and per diem. So I'm comparing that to somebody from Harlan County where the per capita income's $22,000 and they don't have to move. So it kind of seemed like, well, that seems like a good opportunity to kind of bring. And so that's kind of just as an answer to your question, Dr. Gonzalez, where we focused is to say, we've got able-bodied people that are willing to go to work if the opportunity fits them, that will work long hours, that will travel. They would like to not move. We also don't want them to move because that kind of exacerbates some of the issues that we have. And we found good early success in this foothold, and we also think by getting into the industry on the existing fleet, it also starts to give positive momentum for some of the advanced stuff that comes down the road and positions us well as Kentucky tries to catch up, I think, with states like Pennsylvania and others, with workforce, with supply chain, with their own Nuclear Energy Development Authority. And so that's been our example of an opportunity for us that might be a problem for some of these larger companies, but that we're trying to take advantage of in a way that benefits Eastern Kentucky families.
Great, thank you. Rachel.
So for us, this is very exciting because we are excited about all of the energy possibilities and the needs that are out there. We do have a definite unique situation because it's popular to be in the trades right now. And so whereas other higher education opportunities aren't necessarily there, or the traditional routes are not as popular, we had almost 1,700 applicants for our apprenticeship this year, and we only filled 161 spots. So a little bit about apprenticeship. For us, it is on-the-job training as well as classroom training. So 8,000 hours of on-the-job training and 4 years of classroom-related instruction. And that in itself is, well, I don't want to say free, but we are self-funded. So it has become very enticing for this generation, especially those who are looking for meaningful work, that don't want to incur the college debt. And so we are very excited about this. And we have been reskilling and retooling, and we are training more efficiently than ever, so we're ready.
Yeah, I found it really exciting. Earlier conversations about we don't necessarily need only nuclear engineers, but of course electricians are always in demand. And I feel like this is the case across just so many different sectors, not solely energy sectors. The electricians are always going to be in demand. Yes, Sola, sorry to interrupt.
Sure. So by show of hands, again, I'm assuming most of us here either work in the industry or work, within or adjacent to the nuclear industry. By show of hands, who here pre-college knew that they would be working in the nuclear industry or with the industry? 1. Okay, 2. Okay, good. That's more than we usually get when I ask that question. So if this were, say, a medical conference, probably all of us would have our hands up, right? So there's a career awareness challenge that we have. I know that I stumbled into nuclear, as I explained. I got into this industry because Westinghouse was the only energy company in Pittsburgh that would hire me at the time, and so that's how I started. If there was some major gas company, maybe I would have gone there instead. Being from Nigeria, I knew about oil and gas, but I knew absolutely nothing about nuclear. And so I think the career awareness is critical, right? Doug, you talked about how we have to go, starting, I think it's even as early as K through 12, and ensuring that there's that awareness. I have a 9-year-old son, and the poor kid knows a lot about nuclear and small modular reactors and microreactors because I talk about it. But if he was not my son, what chances would a kid like that have to know something about this industry? I will make a quick plug for ORAU, that's Oak Ridge Associated Universities, that's looking to address this issue. There's an initiative that we recently worked on with them that's called the Nuclear Energy Academic Roadmap, and Laura is there. She just pulled the pamphlet up. So if you see Laura, I don't know if you have a few of those. Good. So there are 4 major objectives of the Nuclear Energy Academic Roadmap. One of them is career. The first, I think, actually is career awareness, where there's an initiative to ensure that starting at the K through 12 level, and in fact, we have about 6 cohorts, K through 12, VOTEC, 2-year colleges, 4-year colleges, graduate students and professionals, where for each of those cohorts, there's still a need for career awareness, right? And again, career awareness is just one of the 4 major tracks of that objective. But definitely if you see Laura with ORAL, certainly she can talk a whole lot more about those initiatives.
Great, thank you. And thank you for bringing up career awareness and of course thinking about engaging people into potential job opportunities, both now and the future generations. Doug, thank you for reminding us that we have to think not only about the jobs that are available now, but those that are in the future. I think that's what we're all anticipating with this reemergence of the nuclear industry here. So on that note, moving from the whole person down to the actual industry and potential jobs of the future, could we, again, I'll let you all go down the line about the skills that the nuclear industry is looking for from your perspective, understanding that you're not in industry, but you're really embedded into the education and programming and, of course, training and employment observations that you do have. So from your perspective, how is the current education and training ecosystem building those skills, and how might this ecosystem need to pivot in order to meet the skills now and in the future for the nuclear industry? And again, I feel like we could say this, have the same conversation about any industry, but I think the value of all of us in the room is that we really need to hone in on nuclear and what's happening there. So Sil, I'll start with you and we can go on down. Thanks.
Sure, thank you, Gabriela. So I'll talk about a program that we're working on that's called SMART. It's the Small Modular and Advanced Reactor Training Program. We received a grant from the Appalachia Regional Commission to develop this program. And what SMART is, it's looking at the gaps that we have in the nuclear training curriculum, understanding that the reactors of the future will be designed, developed, deployed, operated, maintained, and decommissioned in different ways from the existing reactors. We can look at, for instance, the issue of co-location that Femi described today in his presentation about the fact that we may be looking to deploy these reactors closer to the demand centers, closer to industrial facilities. There's a lot of talk now about placing reactors next to chemical facilities. So that creates a new risk and safety paradigm that we need to understand in terms of new initiating events where an issue at the chemical facility could cause an issue or an event at the nuclear and vice versa. And so that's one example of how we need to look at the safety training to say, well, this is a deployment scenario that the curriculum currently doesn't necessarily accommodate. There also, when we look at technology, how we have, things like AR, VR technology that can augment and support maintenance, understanding the additional training that we may need for that in terms of human factors engineering. There's also the digitization where we have current reactors and control rooms. Basically, the control room is where, like it sounds, it's where you control the reactor. It's one-to-one, so for every control room you have a reactor, but in the future it's going to be one-to-many, where you have one control room controlling multiple reactors for some of the reactor vendor designs. What does that mean from a human factors engineering standpoint? And so there's a recognition that the current curriculum, nuclear engineering curriculum, focuses on what? The current reactors. The future reactors, we have a gap, and we're trying to identify what those additional needs are and how we can efficiently close those gaps. So, but the good news is, again, the core curriculum, the core knowledge that we have, especially from the nuclear engineering standpoint, we have those very well established. But these additional items that we need to sort of augment are being recognized. And I'll conclude in saying that, as it was mentioned earlier, it's not all nuclear engineers, right? There's studies that have been done to estimate the number of additional workers we need. It's been estimated about between 350 to 500,000 by and large, those are not engineers. Those are electricians, welders, skilled trades. However, they need to understand, there needs to be an appreciation of what it means to be an electrician in the nuclear sector. And I'm intentionally not saying a nuclear electrician, because I think that's some of the gatekeeping that we have to get away from, is being a skilled trades worker in the industry versus, feeling that you have to be a nuclear electrician, a nuclear welder. It's a welder working in the nuclear industry.
Thank you, Rachel.
I appreciate your input. That's fantastic, because when we look at our skill set, an electrician is an electrician, and it doesn't matter where the power is coming from. But making sure that we have the skills that we need to provide, keeping the cost down, and also looking forward to how we're going to prepare people, because we aren't quite ready, right? So we have the time. And this collaboration is fantastic for us because I don't know what I don't know. When it comes to this, we can say we've built these products before, Beaver Valley 1, Beaver Valley 2, right? But I wasn't the person on the job. So that helps us to have this conversation and to be prepared instead of being reactive, being proactive, to make sure that you build with the skilled trades. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Colby.
I'll answer this quick. I'm not sure if I'm the best person to answer this up here. In our limited experience, kind of dealing at least with outage and maintenance workers, what we've heard a lot from the employers that have hired folks that came through us is really a focus kind of on the core skills, I think what formerly used to be called soft skills,
Yep.
but being able to show up, work hard, reliable, communicate, and those are often the hardest types of skills to get, I guess, in a workforce. Now we're fortunate. We feel like that's kind of ingrained in a lot of the folks that come from our mechanically minded, which I think is use your hands, which comes from the Appalachian region in general. I think the last point I'll make is, I think a potential challenge, and we work closely with our community and technical college system in Kentucky, but moving at the speed of business, right? I'm sitting in front of an employer that says he or she could hire 1,800 people today at like this wage level. Your eyes get real big when you think about what that could mean for real people. And I mean, I know our community and technical college, they care, but we don't need to be thinking about letters and AAS all the time. Like, we need to balance the process and make sure it moves at the speed of what these companies that are building plants, as we're in this great race to against other actors. So let's move fast. Let's do it the right way, but let's not drag something out for 2 years if we don't have to, because that company said they could hire 400 people yesterday if they had them. So let's not overcomplicate that.
Great, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to say everything that everybody else said, very important, and just want to echo everything you've said. I think a real challenge is going to be, currently what we're trying to do is, working with small business and industry to identify what these gaps are, with regards to, where do we excel in the workforce, where do we need additional folks, to participate. So we're currently trying to map that out or develop, what those gaps are. But I think in general, I think Shola had mentioned liftoff report with 350 to 370,000 jobs needed. Not all of them nuclear engineers, but maybe 100,000 engineers from mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, civil engineers, concrete engineers, a whole host of different disciplines. And the key there is not only having those different disciplines, but also making sure those disciplines can communicate effectively with one another. So it's really that interdisciplinary type research or that engagement, to make sure that these folks can really engage in trying to solve these complex problems. The other aspect is a key deficiency is in the trades. We really need to, it's wonderful having a conversation with Heidi earlier with regards to the needs for electricians and how we can incorporate, the nuclear aspect with electricians and also for welding, from a technical side, welding, just wrought steel is a little bit different than nuclear grade materials. How do you incorporate metals and ceramics? So all these different things that hopefully, collectively, we can work with the trades and the trade schools and the community colleges where we can help implement curricula that will help our workforce so that as they're, on the job, they're able to understand certain defects or different needs, for that. We're also looking at, we see a big need for micro-credentialing, and certificates, so we can actually help the current workforce pivot slightly to engage into the nuclear area or nuclear applications. So I think collectively the community, what we need to do is work together to identify what those needs are. And the key aspect of that is really reaching back to industry companies, making sure that we're preparing the next workforce that are going to meet the needs of industry, so that when we educate students from apprenticeships or from universities, that they don't have to retrain them. So I think it's really working closely, with industry to make sure that we've identified those gaps and filled those gaps properly with the numbers needed.
Great, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate that each of you touched on in your own different ways, career pathways and connecting with industry and making sure that there is that constant communication about what industry needs, because it can change on a dime. Given all that, given those challenges, how can the region keep pace with what industry needs, especially if we might have some, say, nuclear power plants coming online in 10 years versus what the nuclear industry might need right now? So given your experiences and your expertise to date, I'm curious about what would you consider best practices and some really, some strong models of really making sure that workforce development programming and training can really hit industry's needs. Doug, I'm going to go ahead and start with you again.
Oh, sure. So that's going to be really challenging, I think, as we move forward. Because
that's why I asked the question.
So thank you for that. We really need to make sure that I think the biggest challenge, we want to make sure we're communicating. We want to communicate with federal government, with industry, with the people, and with the workforce to make sure that we've identified, the right jobs at the right time and the right number of jobs at that time, because one of our biggest concerns is that we're going to develop our workforce, up to a peak, and those jobs will not be there in the future. So what do those individuals do then after they've already worked at a company for like 5 years and they have to move to a new plant? So I think one of the biggest challenges is making sure that we've got a steady state, steady flow of not only work for the individuals, but also that when we're training the individuals, that they see a constant path for the job market in that state. And I think the key there is really understanding what is the market needs, what are the market analysis, and that goes back to understanding the supply chain for each of the construction of each of these AP1000s or the other companies that are developing nuclear reactors. Because I think if we're not successful in that space, then we'll flood the market with regards to the jobs within the nuclear field, and that will just result in future generations not wanting to go into the field. So I think that's going to be a key aspect.
I think it's just important to try to make it as easy on employers as possible. I think the burden for keeping up with this and the hustle, in my opinion, should come from training providers, should come from NGOs. In our standpoint, I mean, employers or private sector business people, I want them focused on making money. I want them focused on adding jobs. I want them focused on doing what they're needing to do. I mean, it kind of makes me cringe to think that any place, and again, where I come from, people need jobs, right? So the idea, when I hear people say we have these many jobs and we can't fill them, it hurts me to hear that, because of how important it is getting back to helping somebody climb out of a tough hand they've been dealt, or whatever situation they're in, and whatever part of rural America. So we really try to hustle, and in our case, for example, if you're going to do a hiring event, or if you're going to put source the resumes, source the people, filter, do the screen, and when the employer shows up to look at your talent, or whatever the case is, roll out the red carpet, have the interview scheduled, make it as easy as possible for them to say yes to someone from your community. Don't make it any harder on them than you have to. And so I don't know if that answers your question directly, Dr. Gonzalez, but really trying to streamline the process, but just, again, trying to make it as easy as possible for employers to get the talent they need, putting that burden on us.
That's a good point. Also, I think that we need to go younger. I think that we need to influence the younger people. Your son's fortunate, but not everybody knows what is expected of them to get a job in the industry. And so I think that we need to reach out to the schools so that we have qualified workers. For us, it's as simple as having a driver's license. And sometimes people don't realize what they need, the math skills, and then the soft skills, making sure that people understand that they need to be a reliable worker, that they need to be ethical, that they need to be on time, that they are responsible for their actions. So all of these things also matter. And I think that, like when you said how many people thought that they were going to be in this industry, let's get them ready.
Yeah, thank you for actually teeing up what I was going to mention. I think there's some gatekeeping that occurs in this industry, and I think it's just the nature of part of it is cultural, but obviously if you've ever been into whether it's a nuclear reactor facility or like say the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, just walking through the halls, you can almost feel the culture of the people. It's almost a particular type of person who has traditionally been in this industry. And so I think when we've gotten in, we then start to also become sort of gatekeepers, right? And I really appreciate what you mentioned, Rachel, that it is important that we have a safety culture, for instance. But then what's the mentorship that we need to do so that people will be ready to be safety conscious when they are in this industry, right? So I think there's a distinction between what I would call I wrote it here as you were talking, gatekeeping and gate screening, right? And I think the gate screening means that there is a standard, there is a culture, there is an expectation, but how do we provide the mentorship also that's required to get you to that point that you can work effectively in the industry without necessarily dropping the bar?
Great, thank you, all of you. I have one last question before I open up to Q&A, so get your questions ready, please. I wanted to open up to each of you just to thinking about the questions that I've asked and your responses. Is there any last bits of information that you would, and expertise that you would like to convey? Is there anything that we missed discussing today around workforce and education? Go ahead, Zoe.
Okay, I'll start first of all by saying thank you so much, Gabriella, for organizing this, and thank you so much to Allegheny Conference for hosting this very important conference, very timely, and I think the workforce development topic is probably maybe the limiting issue, above all else. Technology, we've demonstrated the technology. It's these plants work, but do we have the people? Do we have the processes, and do we have the tools in place to ensure that we can have the rate of build that we need to have? Perhaps maybe one item that we didn't touch on that much is the role of technology. We have, for instance, everyone talks about AI these days. How do we see technology? How do we see digitization? How do we see what role does that play, whether in terms of the need to, the potential for it to address the gaps in that if we don't have enough people, well, can technology facilitate or reduce the need, right? And so I think that has to be part of the conversation. But also, on the other end, the technology also is creating the need for additional jobs. So in one way, it may reduce we may see some jobs, go away, but it's also creating new jobs. We talked about the need for additional human factors engineering when we have the control room being one to many. We have the digitization of these facilities where cybersecurity risks now are coming into play because most of the electrical systems were analog, and now they've been digitized, and that now creates cyber vulnerabilities. So we now have cyber risks that we have to think about and mitigate. And so I think being aware, right, of the effects of technology that's moving at such a rapid pace and understanding how that will inform the workforce, I think has to be part of the conversation also.
I think the only thing I'll add quickly is again, kind of circling back to some things I mentioned. I was reading something on LinkedIn this morning from a researcher at Harvard that talked about that, in her opinion, she felt like that this next great era of economic disruption is a chance where the benefits could actually flow to places in America that traditionally have been left, or where past eras of progress did not reach. And I think that has to be a source of real hope and optimism, again, for Eastern Kentucky and other parts of rural America. But I think much like some of the industry representatives or people talked about there being a 6-year wait list for turbines or parts, that same type of work is gonna have to get started on the workforce piece, especially for your non-traditional workforce entrant, somebody that's 40 years old that has never worked or hasn't worked in 15 years, that is dealing with these layers of social and behavioral challenges, that's in constant crises that come with being in generational poverty. That person is not going to be able to navigate to an opportunity in nuclear energy without significant investment from a range of different actors across multiple sectors. But the opportunity cost, I think, is way higher of not doing anything. And in my opinion, I think we see it playing out in our country today with the polarization and what happens when somebody has truly just given up on themselves and has fallen completely apathetic. So that's why I'm super excited, I feel like, because it is an opportunity where we can grab, but there's got to be a lot of work in this space that we're talking about. It's not going to happen organically, and it's not just going to happen with new training programs as much as those are needed. There's going to have to be a lot of coordination and a big time and money investment in getting this right.
Yeah, I would just add that it's perfect timing for the PA Nuclear Summit because we believe this is an exciting time. I mean, we've got a chance here to change the world, with regards to everything that we're doing in nuclear. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity for all of us to come together and collaborate, work together for meeting the needs, the energy needs for for the nation, for the state. So so we're extremely excited about the potentials that nuclear is going to bring to every industry, and it's going to impact practically every individual's life on the planet. So really excited about this opportunity, and we're just appreciative to be part of it. So.
Likewise, very excited to be here and to be in the collaboration aspect of it, making sure that we do skill, we do tool up to provide what you need moving forward and keeping those jobs here and working toward the future.
Great, thank you all. Now we'll move into questions from the audience.
Hi, thank you to this panel. This panel was the good fit for our organization. I'm the current chair of the ANS Pittsburgh section. And like the question that you asked, did we know about nuclear when we graduated? And the answer is no. I knew nothing about nuclear. In fact, I knew nothing about engineering for a long time even too. But what that did for me is it caused me to be passionate now about educating our future students on their STEM careers and the availability of the STEM careers. So, some examples of that with ANS is we have a Boy Scout nuclear badge program. Some of our members are qualified to give that badge program, and we do that for the Boy Scouts. We have public education tables at community events. And a very good example is the Future City program for middle school students. We go to that and are judges at that program, and the students have to power their cities. They have to have all the utilities for their cities. One of them is electricity. And the students all said, back in about 2011, 2013, oh, the nuclear power plant blows up. So ANS, nationally and locally, took on that challenge, and we now actually present an award at the Future City competition for use of nuclear energy in their cities. And the students have become so knowledgeable on nuclear energy and nuclear power plants, they even know about small modular reactors and microreactors now. Things that your neighbors probably don't even know about. So I also encourage you in small ways to talk to your neighbors. Let them know that you work in nuclear energy and you work in the nuclear industry field, that it is safe and clean. The other way that you could support us is to join ANS Pittsburgh, that's my little plug. Volunteer with us, just one Saturday or one day a year would be wonderful. Or sponsor us. We're always seeking sponsor dollars, and we don't need much sponsor dollars, just even $500 would be appreciated from a corporation's point. So, and then ensure that those jobs are available. We're encouraging the students to go into those fields, so please do ensure that those jobs are available for them when they graduate. Thanks.
And just one other quick plug, ANS National is doing a lot of stuff on workforce development. There's some certificate programs that we're developing right now. There's task force for civilian maritime that we're working on. Shola's helping out with several of those types of initiatives, and I'm sure other people around are also supporting a lot of the ANS stuff as well. So I just wanted to give a shout out to ANS. Thank you, Marianne. So that's it.
Can I just say something real quick to follow up on what Tammy said? It's a really important point, and thank you for mentioning that, Tammy. So the American Nuclear Society is really looking at providing a series of credentials so that folks who are not traditional nuclear engineers or in the industry, say it's a welder or an economist that wants to know enough about nuclear to work in the industry, can take one of these certificate programs. It's some training, and then you'd have that credential. And we're looking broadly, not just things in the reactor. I like to say that it's also looking outside the reactor. And we've even introduced a course that we're developing that's called Nuclear Economics, right? And it's because we've noticed that, as I mentioned in my slides, that a lot of the traditional economic models don't map well when it comes to nuclear. We have things like diseconomies of scale, oligopolies that exist, et cetera. And so the courses that Tammy just mentioned are trying to address some of those gaps.
I have a question to Rachel, I believe. You mentioned that you have great demand, but it sounded like you had to turn away maybe 90% of your applicants this past year. And my question is, what recourse do those applicants have that maybe couldn't have gotten into the IBEW apprenticeship system? Are they referred elsewhere? Are there other training opportunities for them so that they can still get a career in the trades?
The way that it works is that the applicant, those who qualify, take an aptitude exam. And then from the aptitude exam, they are granted an interview if they score well enough, which is above average in two programs, whether it's algebra and functions and reading comprehension. And everyone who gets an interview is placed onto a list, a waiting list. And so what's unique about us is that we don't place people in school until they have a job. And so if we had more demand as far as, we don't want to flood the market. You know, we talk about the first of a kind. We don't want to fill up all of those spaces with apprentices who are potentially going to get laid off after that one of gets built. So we do try to steer people into other jobs with the contractors, because everyone's looking for work and we know that they have that interest, but it isn't as easy as just saying, well, if you can't hack it as a, you know, if you don't want to do this, or maybe you want to take a look at another trade. We haven't really looked at that, because the people who want to be electricians want to be electricians. And so it isn't that they come to us just, hey, I want a job. So they're waiting, but that could easily be helped by increasing our market share.
Any other questions? Any examples from the audience, from your experience, of what are some really solid models around workforce and training that you would like to share?
Sherry McCleary. I'm with the Penn State Digital Foundry, and we serve local manufacturers in southwestern Pennsylvania, and also do workforce development for advanced manufacturing. And Colby, I have a question for you, because first of all, thank you so much for your perspective. I think it was very impactful and a very important one to not lose sight of. And I think that we have a lot of pockets of the same kind of things you're talking about on a bigger scale in Eastern Kentucky. And you're right, the whole person part of it is something that we often lose sight of. So I wanted to ask you, the question is, because I think that the Network for Success reaches far beyond people in this room or the type of people in this room. How are you engaging other sectors and other organizations such as social services and people who are providing some of those things that really help to address that whole person issue? Because I think that that is often missing. We focus so much on the technical skills, and even the soft skills are still a little more tangible, but there's still a lot of those deep scars that somebody else has to help us figure out.
Well, it's a puzzle for sure. And again, I can't speak exactly for southwestern Pennsylvania, but at least in eastern Kentucky, we're a place that's received heavy federal investments, a lot of federal grants. And so if anybody knows anything about federal grants, often, 3 years at a time, $1.5 million to do some work. And so we see folks that come in to solve a problem. People get lost, so they'll get A here, they'll get B here, they'll get C here. You've got state workforce development dollars. You've got, means-tested benefit programs. So you take this person that is responsible for navigating through this system of support, and it's just overwhelming. Listen, the little bit I've had to navigate, it's overwhelming for me. I mean, I just should not do. I mean, it's miserable. If we're just, no, it's nobody's fault. It's just how it is. So you're talking about a person that's little resiliency, that's really concerned about maybe where their next meal's coming from, or the fact that their electric bill's going to be cut off next month, or whatever crises is in their head. And then they're on this wild goose chase to get help. And then, in our case, in rural America, right, most of those services are concentrated in whatever the county seat is, and that person may live 40 minutes out. And so for us, we are trying to be kind of like a case management for case management, so to speak. So somebody that always has a thread line for that individual person, and making sure that we're doing co-enrollment, but we're doing different things for the same person, right? But that person doesn't get lost in their journey. And so somebody that comes to our door in moments of crises, we got to get them stabilized, right? I mean, making sure that they just get to a place where they can think about where the next step is. Or somebody that's never worked before, they may have to go work in retail or get a minimum wage job just to get some of that experience. And I think our systems, and we have lots of partners that chip in, but anybody on their own can only do so much for that person. And that's no fault of their own, because their grant scope is limited or their agency is limited, but it takes some sort of backbone organization, or at least that's what our theory is, that has to stay with that person or group of people in front of them through the life of whatever their ultimate end goal is. And we all want them to get to the promised land of economic self-sufficiency. But it's like for people that, again, I compare it to having two parents that provided that type of mentor guidance from when I was born to when I was 18 years old that I was super privileged to have. And you can't be everybody's mom and dad, but it takes that type of encouragement. I mean, you're talking about people, a lot of people that just miss formative, like emotional development. So they may be 35 years old, but they deal with things like as if they're 15 or 16, and that's not a knock, but it's how to handle conflict in the workplace. How to, you can't just show up to work and then leave without telling somebody because you got a ghost, like little things like that, and it just takes a while for those things. So like for us, it's trying to be a constant presence in coordinating those services, but also just staying with them, and even staying with them post-employment, because the risk of them falling back or falling in the gaps, and then that's a real tragedy, right, when that happens. So that's kind of how we're doing it. Take what somebody can, but trying to be an agency or a group outside that's always seeing full picture long-term for what's happening to that person.
Maybe I'll just add to that real quick. I think that's an excellent question, and I think for this industry in particular, that we need to maybe spend a little bit more time focusing on just on the social aspect, the wraparound services that we need. We focus a lot on the technical aspects, and I'll share a quick story. When I was 25, I had a motorcycle accident, and I was rushed to an emergency room at Mercy Hospital, just a few thousand feet from here. And fortunately, I had my helmet on and all my body gear, so I wasn't really hurt, but I was in a lot of pain, and I was offered a narcotic painkiller. And so the doctor offered me, and I said, what is it? And he said, it's a narcotic. And I said, no, I don't want it. And he said, why? He said, you'll feel so much better. And I said, no, I don't want it because I work in the nuclear industry, and we have this in processing to go into a nuclear plant where there are sections I'm able to skip because I can say I've never had a narcotic, and I want to be able to continue to skip those sections. And so there's that gatekeeping that's required, where when you're 10, when you're a teenager, you need to understand that if you're interested in working in this industry, just like things like medicine, from preteens, there are things you have to start to do, experiences you have to get, people you have to go shadow. That has nothing to do with the MCATs, right? That you need to understand. I think that's part of the career awareness is, yeah, these jobs exist, but there are some standards and expectations, and I think that goes to the mentorship and the coaching that you said, because you can't, have someone at 35 and not all of a sudden you have these high level of expectations that they were just not prepared for. So I think when we look back and we talk about the K through 12 mentorship, there's a career awareness, there's a technical, there's the STEM, but there's also the social wraparound services that we need to also include.
I mean, the last thing I'll say is I used to think you can't be all things to this, but I mean, if you aren't, there's a million reasons that will keep them from progressing in whatever their next step is on the path to meaningful employment. So it's paying for gas to get to an interview, it's fixing a flat tire, it's and they may not have air conditioning in their house, they may not have a dryer, and when all those things in life happen to somebody, like if they don't get that one thing that's fixed in front of them, maybe Medicaid doesn't cover their glasses, they can't see, maybe they don't have teeth, and so all those things can impact on a person's ability to get employed. And it's nobody's, people sometimes could see that as a handout, and there's no doubt people that may try to game the system sometimes, but what we try to say is look, we know this person, we've worked with them from 6 months, They've signed a covenant to us that they've showed up to meetings, they're going to class, they're doing these things, and we feel pretty confident that like these resources that are going to them, like we feel good. So there's mutual accountability there, but it's trying to find partners and funding that are responsive to those types of real life needs for people that typically come from low income backgrounds.
All right, thank you. Oh, we have one last question, and we have 1 minute left. I've been given the warning.
I'll be quick. Hi, Gabby. This is Petra Mitchell with Callus Connection, and you had made the comment about, you know, other successful models in the community. And I just wanted to kind of share, you know, we focus on working on the talent pipeline for manufacturing companies, small and medium-sized manufacturing companies. We heard a little bit about that in the nuclear supply chain and so forth. A model that seems to be getting traction is a pre-apprenticeship to apprenticeship and community college career pathway model, where our high school students can earn prior learning credits into an employer-led apprenticeship program and into a community college, either certificate or an associate degree, which then also can lead to further education and credentialing and so forth. And so thanks to Gabby and the R.K. Mellon Foundation, we're now also able to coordinate that with all of the group sponsors for manufacturing apprenticeship programs, so there's no wrong door. And we do hope that, you know, any individual in our community that is interested in a manufacturing career, this is a viable pathway for them to achieve their goals. So just like to share that with everyone. Thank you.
Great, wonderful, thank you. I believe our time is up right now. And I want to thank our panelists again. Let's give a nice warm applause. And not only for their discussion today, but really for the amazing work that they have been doing and are doing right now. So thank you, the four of you.